Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
What do you want to do with your life? I want to talk.
Welcome back to I Want to Talk. Well, back for me. You guys didn't go anywhere. It's been a minute, hasn't it? Yeah, sorry about that. You know, when I agreed to do this podcast, I didn't think it out completely. I didn't. Understatement of the year. Because at the end of every year, well, right around December, I take a break, a long vacation through the holidays and through January as well. And I usually just completely disconnect and, just go off and disappear. And not realizing that in order to keep a podcast going, you need to stockpile shows. When I did realize it, I have a problem. I've been having problems with my voice. So the stress level on my voice, I see Jamie St. James. Oh my God. Josta, I'm sorry, dude. It was just the Jamie part. I do not think you and the lead singer of Black and Blue in the same breath. Just, I don't know why. That name just flew back into my brain. But Josta does a podcast, and he's a stockpiling maniac. He does shows, and during the day he goes and records one or two podcasts. Then at night he goes and sings. If you want to call it singing, it's not actually singing, but it's still a strain on his voice. I'm not insulting him. He wouldn't consider what he does in Hatebreed singing anyway. But then, he stockpiles. I, on the other hand, I was doing live shows. I can't stockpile. On those days. I can't sing on those days. Do interviews on those days because it strains the throat. So anyway, as my break started looming, the holiday break, I was without shows. So I told my company that puts my podcast up, Gas Digital Media. I said, you want to just pull the plug on this thing because I don't have the shows. And they said, no, we'll run some of your older stuff. And then we dug out some stuff from my Snider Comments podcast from a couple of years ago, put some of those things up. And, it was just something to fill the space while I did my, R&R, which I needed. And people who listen to the House of Hair saying, but House of Hair continues on. Yes, I'm in the habit after 22 years of stockpiling those shows. And since it's not a straight talk show, it's a music-driven show, it's a lot less work and strain on my voice to do the breaks, as they call them, between the songs and the commercials. So, and I've got a groove with that. My team who puts together the shows, they supply me with the scripts. I make them funny. If you're laughing at the House of Hair, those who haven't seen House of Hair, you want to check it out. It's a show I've been doing. This is the 22nd year. The best of the 70s, 80s, early 90s hair bands and heavy metal. And it's on about 220 stations in North America and Germany. I don't know if we're still in Mexico. We were for a while. So anyway, it's a very, it's sort of a more a DJ style, I'm more amped up because I'm playing this hyped up 80s rock for the most part. So just sort of inspires the show. But those shows, I'm just in a habit of stockpiling and have that down. Stockpiling podcasts, I haven't got that down yet at all. I hope to get better at it. And so Happy New Year, by the way. Belated. Happy holidays to everybody. Belated. I've been, a lot of R&R, but usually my break, and I know people are going to say, elitist asshole, hey, I earned it, but usually I take off from middle of December and it rolls pretty much into March as a rule. But with the success of For the Love of Metal, my demand for live shows has gone up. So I've been back, and I was in Australia about a week ago. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And ultimately on this show, by the way, I want to talk about the tweet that went insane about the halftime music at the Super Bowl. It's still going insane as I speak, so I figured, this is something of interest to people, and maybe I'll talk about it a little bit more in depth because I've got some more thoughts on it. Those of you who saw the tweet know what I'm talking about. Those who didn't, I'll inform you in a second. Okay, but I went to Australia. That was awesome. Came back a couple days. Now I'm in Detroit at a convention called Astronomicon, put together by the guys from the band Twisted. TWIZTED. A lot of cool people here, friends. When you do these conventions, you sort of get into a convention groove, and you start to have the regulars and friends and people like Sid Haig, the legendary Sid Haig, Bill Moseley, Chop Top from you know him from Captain Spaulding, by the way. Sid Haig, Chop Top from the Texas Chainsaw movies. Bill Moseley, Linda Blair, of course, she doesn't need to be introduced. A person who needs no introduction, Linda Blair, and who I'm hoping to interview for the podcast while I'm here with her. Because not only has she had this very interesting career, but she's big into animal rescue, dog rescue. I mean, her life is dedicated to it now. And I think that's an interesting turn for her and a very important cause. So I'm hoping to interview her while I'm here at Astronomicon. Then next week, where am I going? I'm shooting a pilot for a new TV show next week. Then I think I'm going to, week after that, I've got my own float in the Mardi Gras parade this year. Bucket list. Always wanted to be on a float in Mardi Gras. This year there's a Dee Snider 80s rock themed float. So I'll be going down there with my whole family, and we're all going to ride in a float. So that's going to be insane. Then I've got an 80s cruise going on. I swore I would never do a cruise. And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So hitting the high seas for 10 days. That's the beginning of March. Then I go to South America for a tour for the Love of Metal, touring down there. So it's pretty, I've got, usually, like I said, I'm off for the first quarter of the year. I'm pretty solidly busy just already. I had about 5 or 6 weeks off. Luxury. I know people going, don't complain, you asshole. I only get 2 weeks. I'm not complaining. Just saying. I was off for a few weeks. It was great. And, so now I'm back at work. So now I'm trying to get back to the podcast. And I've got to get in the groove on this thing, man. For you guys to create some sort of consistency on the show. And, there's a lot more. I'd like to do a lot more interviews as well. I mean, there's times when I want to talk to you guys and just talk, and this is one of them right now, because this is a conversation with you and me, not a conversation with anybody else, not at this point, this Super Bowl halftime thing. But, I've read 2 more Annie Jacobson books. The woman I interviewed who did Area 51, she got into this, what's the word for it? It's Freedom of Information Act. And she decided to try and access these things. It's not easy. Freedom of information, the release of government documents after a certain amount of time. Yes, it's there, but you have to know how to access it. And she discovered that walking in and saying, hey, I'd like to see everything you got on Area 51, she got a blank stare and they said, I don't know what you're talking about. because that's not what the dossiers and the files are called. And it took Annie a while of interviewing people and talking to people so she found out the language that they use. And it's like the keys to the kingdom. Once you know how to ask for information, how to figure out what the file names are and how to access, she was in. And with the Area 51 book, which I interviewed her on, while she was there, she found out about something called Operation Paperclip. Once she had that phrase, she found out that Operation Paperclip was the U.S. government harvesting of Nazi scientists, over 1,000 after World War II, forgiving all sins and allowing them into our country to work for the government. So that was interesting documents. Then Phenomena, another offshoot of the things she was investigating. Turns out that our government, and I'm talking about CIA, FBI, Army, Air Force, all different parts of the government, for about 25 years, were studying, investigating, and trying to figure out how to weaponize. That was the root of it. Weaponize psychic abilities. Okay? People who could read minds, people who had telekinesis, people who were psychic. So the government studies on this, which despite what you're hearing, beyond a shadow of a doubt, verifies its existence. The government don't fool around. But then their efforts to figure out how they could use it against our enemies, very interesting. That's Phenomena. I read that book as well. So Annie's loved being on the show, on the podcast. So she's going to come back to talk about those in future weeks. But I really hope to get a lot more interviews going on. I've got a break in April, and I'm going to use that time to try and stockpile some things so I don't run into this situation again. Okay? Australia was interesting. Drink of water, please. I hadn't been to Australia since 85. When I left in 85, successful Twisted Sister shows over there, We're Not Gonna Take It was number 6 on the charts. Huge hit over there. Album, I don't know, platinum. I think pretty sure it's platinum. I remember seeing a platinum Australia album hanging on the wall at my house. Big record. I go back 35 years later. Oddly, I booked the show like 6 months before going there. Oddly, before I get there, some politician starts using a re-recorded version of We're Not Gonna Take It, words altered, in a commercial campaign. He models himself after Trump, but doesn't have even slightly the degree of popularity. But he's a billionaire in Australia. His motto is "Make Australia Great." It's not even again. It's like it never was at any point. You can't say it still is. Make America great, make Australia great, and the guy. I've had politicians and people use the song at rallies and events. This was a commercial campaign. Commercial campaigns require licensing. And this guy actually contacted my publishers about a license. I wouldn't have given him a license anyway, by the way. And found out what the fee would be. And then a billionaire decided he was going to work without the license and just started running the commercials. And he did. So this became a thing in Australia. And after 35 years, We're Not Going to Take It is back in the conversation and on the tip of everybody's tongue. So I went there, did 2 spoken word shows and 2 spoken word events and 2 shows in Sydney and Melbourne, and wound up doing a shitload of press. There was just so much interest in, and because we are actually taking him to court, and and he's fighting it. He's actually fighting it. Taking the fool's gonna do it. He's actually fighting it, taking the position that I didn't write the song. that I have it illegally licensed and somebody else wrote it and I stole it from them. So it's going to be an interesting court case that he's going to lose. But it's not going to happen until later this year because the wheels of justice turn very slowly. So, but I went to Australia, and, a cool thing right now about what I get to do, I don't tour like I said I don't tour, but I don't tour or do things like I used to do things. I don't have to, thankfully. So when I do a show in Australia, 2 shows in Australia, I took an additional 8 days, and Suzette and I traveled around Australia. We immediately went to the outback to Ayers Rock, 116 degrees, crazy, but it was really cool. It's a monolith, man. And when you first land and you see it in the distance, you go, really? That's why we're all here, a rock? But when you get up to it, you just see it protruding out of the ground, and there's so much history connected to it, tribal history, and drawings and paintings and caves and things like that. Incredibly interesting. So went up to Ayers Rock in that area for a couple days, flew to Melbourne, got a car, and they've got something called the Great Ocean Road. The Great Ocean Road runs along the east coast of Australia, very similar to the Pacific Highway on the west coast. Very similar, actually dead across from each other by several thousand miles, and on the Pacific Ocean. But we took a few days driving down there, just seeing the sights, visiting things. Amazing. It was beautiful. Then went to Adelaide to Sydney, spent a few days in Sydney. That was awesome. Then went to Melbourne, spent a couple days in Melbourne. So, turn these sort of work mixed with pleasure kind of thing. And I've been all over the world. Back with Twisted, we toured all over the world. I was pretty much everywhere. But I can say that I pretty much saw nothing. My work ethic kept me in my room and focused on the mission, destroy every night. Plus, I had this sense like I didn't want to see the world. And some of you guys are going to go, pussy. Hey, I'm going to tell you something. People say I'm pussy whipped. I say, hey, if you got to be whipped, let it be my pussy. Just wail away, honey. Wail away. Anyways, but I just really, Suzette and I, we've got a great relationship. Did not want to see the world without her. I didn't want to go and I knew we'd do stuff later in life, and I didn't want to go around and be like sort of seeing it for the second time. I wanted to share the experience. But while I was on the road, I was taking note of these great cities, seen from my limo, seen from the bus, seen from my hotel window, and saying, I want to come back here. Vienna, what a beautiful city. I want to come back here. Budapest in Hungary. What an amazing city. I remember telling Suzette we got to go to Budapest, and she was like, Budapest? What? When she got there, she's like, oh my God, what a beautiful city. Places like Gotland Island, which is a little island off the coast of Sweden, which in the summertime is a vacation hotspot. A medieval island, and it's sort of Hamptonish, for lack of a better words, or Nantucket, that kind of thing. Martha's Vineyard, think that, right? And we played a show there. And I got to come back here with Suzette, and Suzette again was like, "What's Gotland Island? I never even heard of it." Got there, loved it, great experiences. So I made notes of where I want to go back to and where I want to visit and things I want to do with Suzette. And we did. So it's great at this point in our life, we're getting to do those things. And that's awesome. So just got back from Australia. I'm in Detroit. I've had a little time. But the other day, something, it's crazy, There was a tweet or somewhere it said, what's 3 words? What's your opinion of Twitter? And my 3 words were verdict still out. And the reason was because I'm still not sure about its value. Yeah, you've got thousands of followers and all that stuff, but I'm not sure what it's doing for me, what it's doing for anybody. Well, you can say, well, Trump's got a wide audience that he can communicate with instantaneously. And there is that. But for my work, for what I do, yeah, I guess I could say, hey, I'm in Sharknado 6, it's on tomorrow night. Yeah, I guess it gets people aware. I got a new album out. It gets people aware. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I'm just not sure of the time put in, what you're getting out of it, other than a really cool connection with your audience. That's kind of cool. You get sort of a direct connection to them, and it's and they get some insight into you. But then again, I got these feelings that social media somehow like pulls you down. It's so involved. Fortunately, I don't handle my Instagram. I do some Instagram. Don't handle Facebook at all. My people handle Facebook. Twitter I handle. My website I don't handle. If I had to do all those things, I'd have no time for creativity. And that is detrimental. I see people who are on Facebook way too much. I'm not talking about celebrities. I'm talking about average people. And when I think about what they might do, what they might learn, they're so many of them are bored with their lives, want more out of their lives. Well, the time you're spending on Facebook and Instagram and social media, you could be taking some courses. You could be studying something. You could be learning a new craft, learning a new art. You could be seeing things, doing things. I mean, there's so much that you could be doing. And I think a lot of our time gets sucked up with mindless recreation. And yeah, I'm going to call it mindless when I see, a fair amount of posts on Facebook and Instagram are people's food. Taking a picture of their food. I know I have taken a picture of food. So, but as a regular thing, and also I've kind of gone off on people about sharing their thought process on social media. I'm thinking about doing blank. Who fucking gives a shit? And I look at the amount of followers they got, and I'm looking at the amount of people that are liking it. And they're just like, who cares what you're thinking about? Internalize, don't externalize. Let us know what you're doing. I particularly have been reactive on when people say, I'm thinking about going to see Dee Snider. I don't care are you going or you're not going. Tell me you're not going to see me. Tell me you're going to see me. But thinking about it, who gives a shit that you're processing the idea? Ugh. Anyway, so part of my verdict still out on social media, particularly Twitter, was the fact that I've been on there for years now. And that I would, I'll write about, projects I'm working about. I'll write about thoughts I have about the world. I'll talk about, sometimes some personal things going on. I'll share things. And they get retweets, in the hundreds or whatever. I mean, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. But for a long time, my biggest tweet was, I love pancakes. I didn't have a big, tweets were like in the hundreds, retweets or whatever. And then one day I'm just sitting there and I go, and I was just thinking about pancakes. And I just wrote, I love pancakes. The fucking thing blew up. Thousands of retweets. I love pancakes. Could it be more mindless? Insane. So that really had me infuriated for a long time, because then I would go back to tweeting, hey, you're working on a new album, going to be doing a show, got a, appearance, so, and then, 50 retweets, 100, whatever, likes. And And I love pancakes, gets thousands. Then my next massive tweet, which beat I love pancakes. And it's interesting that now that I'm thinking about it, the thought out tweets never react like the spontaneous, just sort of flow of, just the flow of my mind tweets. And one day I was sitting in a lounge at an airport, and this guy walks in wearing a Slayer shirt. And I'm looking at him. And, and judge not lest ye be judged. I got to say, I'm big on don't judge a book by its cover, but I was judging a book by its cover. But I was bored. And I was just sort of, eyeballing. And after about 45 minutes of sort of watching this guy in action, I ascertained that he was not a Slayer fan. His actions, his words, he was a millennial wearing a metal t-shirt, which we know is like a thing, and I said, and I tweeted about how it was bullshit that, that these people were wearing, this is our flags here. We fought. There was time in our lives where we fought with people over our right to wear these images, these symbols on our bodies, these names of these bands. And many of you know, you've been in fights over this stuff. And now they're wearing it like it's ironic. It's irony that they got a Slayer shirt on or a, Man of War shirt on. So a Man of War shirt going for $275 in some secondhand clothes boutique. A Man of War tour shirt. Crazy, right? It probably cost $5 when it came out. Anyway, I said something about it was bullshit. And that tweet blew up. And I remember getting a call from JJ because he was manages Twisted Sister and he was just trying to put together a merch deal. And the merch deals today are monetized by the fact that there's this whole audience that buys retro shirts who aren't fans, So JJ was upset that I was, because he went back to the meeting and they were like, your singer just bashed the idea of, of people buying, buying metal shirts if they're not fans. So anyway, but that one blew up. I wasn't intending it to blow up. It was just a casual thought, blew up. The other day, a couple days ago, I had a casual thought. It was after the Super Bowl, which I did not see. I was literally on a plane flying back from Australia when the game was on. But when I landed, I got the report. I checked out who won and who lost and the game. And I was very curious about halftime because there was some hubbub about Maroon 5, and Adam Levine had talked some shit about rock and roll. Some of you remember that was that was a big tweet, social media thing when I spoke out at Adam Levine. A lot of times tweets get picked up by the press as almost like an interview, So Adam Levine had talked shit about rock and roll being not creative and uninventive and blah, blah, blah. And that the only originality is coming from hip hop and pop, And, a whole bunch of us, Sebastian went off, I went off, Corey from Slipknot went off, and it was being an ass, and I met Adam, and he was decent enough, but I met him before he became, Adam Levine, sexiest man alive, 2014 or whatever he was. So I don't know what his, clearly he's not thinking the same way because Adam, when I met him, he told me that he sang "I Wanna Rock" in summer camp in the talent contest, and people flipped, and it was at that moment that he decided he wanted to be a singer in a rock band, singing "I Wanna Rock." So I mean, at his core, somewhere in there's a rock guy. Sure enough, got the tattoos to go with it. And so there was a lot of hubbub about Maroon 5, and then they couldn't get any other hip hop acts to join them, and I made comment that maybe he wants to, maybe should ask Twisted Sister to join him, and and come out there. Guaranteed that would have like lit the place up. So they perform, and it's regarded. The reports were one of the worst Super Bowl performances ever, up there with Coldplay the year before. And so I'm just thinking about it. And I tweet something, and I don't have the exact tweet in front of me. But the gist was directed at the NFL. Hey, NFL, why is it that when you're pumping up the fans, it's Enter Sandman, Welcome to the Jungle, We're Not Going to Take It, Final Countdown, We Are the Champions, the list, Come On, Feel the Noise, it's all this classic rock, classic metal, hard rock. I said metal in the tweet, and I included Queen songs in there. And, because people, Queen or metal. A, you're missing the point. B, listen, they have influenced so many metal bands. And when they started out, I'm day one Queen fan. They were metal. And they became more poppy. But Brian May, one of his main influences is Tony Iommi, and and their influence on metal. So let's not split hairs. Powerful vocals, powerful drums, powerful guitars. They rock. Sheer Heart Attack. I mean, come on. Tie Your Mother Down. This is metal, all right. But be that as may, let's not. Let's not get off the point. But I said, these are your go-to songs. Yet not one of the Crazy Train is another one. Yet AC/DC, right? Thunderstruck. Yet not one of these bands has ever played the halftime show. What's up with that? That tweet it's in the tens of thousands of likes and retweets and people talking about it in conversation about, how they should, we should have a petition and for some reason people, for the most part, didn't put that together. That it kickstart my heart, right? How about that one? During the game, these are the go-to songs. Yet halftime, we get Katy Perry, Coldplay, Lady Gaga, Maroon 5. What the fuck? And I actually was inspired. My tweet was inspired by an article in Classic Rock magazine. And the guy had said, bring classic rock back to the halftime. And the guy was writing it, interestingly, writing for classic rock. He said, look, I like classic rock, but I'm not a classic rock fan per se. I prefer to listen to Coldplay and Maroon 5. This was the guy's, I'm paraphrasing the guy's article. But he said, but for those events, in that moment, with a crossover crowd, classic rock, hard rock, the metal, this is music people know. Everybody knows, young and old. And everybody enjoys. And why not play the music that you're playing during the game and that the people enjoy? Why not have Guns N' Roses? Why not have AC/DC? Why not have Ozzy? They had Kiss in 1999. That was great. Kiss crushed it. That was the only hard rock band they've ever had. So this just blew up. But then I went and I did some research because I was curious. And, you just put in top, rock and jock anthems or top, sports anthems. And there's plenty of articles on it. And there was one put together, the top 100 sports anthems. And it was eye-opening on both sides. First of all, I went through the whole list. Twisted Sister, We're Not Going to Take It, I Want to Rock is not on it. I know these songs are played at games regularly, but for some reason, we did not make the top 100. By the way, all the other songs I mentioned come on in my tweet. Come on, Feel the Noise, Crazy Train, Kickstart My Heart, Welcome to the Jungle, The Final Countdown. They were all in the top 100. But Twisted Sister was not. Fair enough. People are saying, yeah, Twisted Sister should play. No. That wasn't the spirit of it. And by the way, you got to have more hits to play it to do that. And Twisted had a couple bona fide hits. And with our fans, people go, you can't stop rock and roll, burn in hell. But you talk about mainstream, we're good for a couple of songs, that the people that everybody could like. But with a Guns N' Roses, a Def Leppard, Ozzy, AC/DC, they've got hit after hit. They've got enough music that everybody knows, and it's going to be massive. The other thing I learned from the list was that all those bands on there that I mentioned are on there. But there's a lot of other bands, that hip-hop bands and pop bands and, there's a lot more. In my mind, all they play during the breaks at sporting events is 80s rock. That's what I hear. That's because my radar only picks that up. Everything else sort of just, I'm not like, it's not registering with me. And it's probably not registering with you. When I look there, songs like House of Pain, Jump Around, I'm like, oh yeah, they play that one all the time. I mean, there was a lot. In that 100, I would say 25% were 80s rock, classic rock bands. The other 75% were not. That's a lot. I would not have thought that many not classic rock, not metal, not hard rock bands were played. But here's one thing that I saw. On that entire list, 100 out of the whole list, 2 artists whose music is played to pump up the crowd performed at the halftime. Kiss, out of all the halftime performances. And by the way, halftime performances, because I've been looking at that, started out as literally marching bands. Super Bowl I, like a tradition. Then it evolved and it became sort of themes. And then it turned into music. And at one point, The Who played, and I think Springsteen played, and Petty played. But out of 2 bands on the entire list had their music, it was used for pump up. Kiss, Rock, Roll All Night, Party Every Day. And the Black Eyed Peas, who have what's considered one of the worst appearances in Super Bowl history. But they do have 2 songs that are used, let's get this party started. Again, a party in here, party. They've got their couple songs. So that's pathetic. That is pathetic. That why wouldn't those bands be the go-to bands when you've got Def Leppard on that list with the catalog they have? Catalog means the amount of hits. When you've got Guns N' Roses, when you've got AC/DC, when you've got Ozzy Osbourne, why wouldn't you have these bands? Can you imagine the crowd reaction when Ozzy's last song goes, all aboard, and they go into Crazy Train? The stadium would lose their shit. Don't think AC/DC, the band they are the biggest selling band in history. They have the biggest selling record, singularly. Back in Black, 45 million copies. The second biggest selling album in history. First, Michael Jackson. Okay. All right. Everybody, AC/DC is that band that crosses over. I remember I hosted a VH1 special called a very rockin', very classic Thanksgiving. And I did it for a couple of years, and it was Thanksgiving with classic rock people. And at the table was Terry Nunn from Berlin, Eddie Money, Clarence Clemens from E Street Band, Davy Jones from the Monkees, MC Hammer, a whole bunch of cool bunch of people. And one of the questions I asked was, what song is your theme song? What song defines you? And I kind of thought people were going to say, like, their own songs, which some did. When I got to MC Hammer, he goes, Back in Black. Dan, and he starts singing. The whole table, from Terry Nunn, Clarence Clemens, Eddie Money, Davy Jones from the Monkees, everybody started singing together. Excuse me. We all started singing because that crosses over. Somebody in a tweet to me said, "Oh, yeah, you do that. It's just appealing to old white guys." A, there's a lot of old white guys who are watching the Super Bowl. B, that is a generalization, an unfair one. It's not the facts. Music crosses racial barriers. Hip-hop does too. There's hip-hop songs you like. Pop does too. Because, being metal, some of us can be a little, in my day, nothing invaded my metal space. I was the fastest button pusher on the old radios. You couldn't get one note out. I could name that tune in 1 second. Madonna song would come on the radio. It'd be like, that, bam, gone. Gone. I am not being abused by Madonna for 1 second. I was back in the 80s. I could give a shit now. I just don't just blank it out. Like I said, watching sporting events, I never noticed all those pop songs that are played regularly at the events. So the idea that this is just a white thing, it's not. When you get a crossover band like Guns N' Roses, when you get a band that's selling 45 million albums, believe me, it's not just metalheads who are buying it. That's when its appeal is so broad. When you have diamond albums are 10 million or more, which Def Leppard has, Guns N' Roses has. You don't sell 10 million records without crossover appeal. You just don't. So, my message to the NFL, not that they're paying attention, would be look to your list and look for the artists like I've just mentioned, and there are probably some others in there, and let them do the halftime show. They've already got a connection with your audience. They're already connected. Let them, don't put Coldplay on us and Maroon 5. We want bombast. At least Lady Gaga had the big show. Prince, who's not on the list, by the way. I figured Let's Go Crazy was on the list. Has one of the most legendary, if not the most legendary, a Super Bowl show, performed live in the pouring rain, by the way. Live. They said one thing, everything's lip sync. That's not true. A lot these days, but there are artists, and rock artists tend, not all. Eddie Trunk's recently gone off about just how fed up he is with tracks, people singing tracks, and there's a lot going on now. But there's still a lot of rock artists. Springsteen doesn't play the tracks. I believe he played Super Bowl. Petty didn't play the tracks. There's some who don't play the tracks. And that gives an authenticity. You're going to get that from AC/DC. You're going to get that from Guns N' Roses. But look to that list. And some of your artists, that are on these lists, they don't have Queen. I think you should have Queen with Adam Lambert. Adam Lambert crushes it. He doesn't imitate Freddie, but he's got a voice to to do the songs properly, and he just sings his ass off. And some people, I've heard a comment that Adam Lambert's too gay. Seriously? Maybe before you saw Bohemian Rhapsody, you were fooled by the leather cap and the mustache and the little skinny pants, and you thought Freddie was butch, but maybe you probably know now he wasn't, he isn't, and he was a flamer. I love Freddie. Queen's one of my favorite bands. But I'm just straight talk. Adam Lambert's too gay. Give me a break. He crushes it with Queen. Well, think about what they would do with the audience when they go into We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. Oh, my God. They'd be peeling people off the enormous dome ceilings. That'd be insane. So I was just saying, think about this. You got bands like Twisted Sister or Quiet Riot or I'm trying to think of other bands, but even some of the hip-hop bands who only had, the Baja Men. You play Who Let the Dog Out. Think about doing themed shows, like an 80s rock theme show. They get Motley doing Kickstart My Heart, Twisted doing We're Not Going to Take It, Europe doing The Final Countdown. You know what I mean? That would be incredible. People would lose their shit. And that goes for the hip-hop bands, too. Baha Men come out doing Who Let the Dogs Out. House of Pain does Jump Around. I mean, you get a couple others in there, get 4 of those bands. Think about that. But think about, you've been testing the music with your audience. You know what they react to. You know what they like. Did you ever play a Maroon 5 song and have the crowd light up? Coldplay? Katy Perry? What moment in sports history did she inspire? So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I'm thinking, is there a petition? Maybe it's time for that petition. Maybe it's time for people to start making their voices heard, because we have just had 2 horrible Super Bowl years. Coldplay, huge band, but there are bands that are larger than life, and Coldplay is not. They were upstaged by their guests. Beyonce was one of them. They disappeared the minute anybody with any kind of bombast or personality came out. They were just like dusted. And Maroon 5 couldn't even be dusted because they couldn't get anybody to come. Because all they wanted were hip-hop artists who stood with Colin Kaepernick. Hey, guess what? I stand with Colin Kaepernick. I'm censorship, baby. It's a censorship issue. Freedom of speech, freedom of choice. I stand with it. Would I play the Super Bowl? Yes, I would. To me, they're not mutually exclusive. You can support Colin Kaepernick's right to take a knee and play the Super Bowl. There are people saying, I'm not going to cross that line. Well, that's your choice. But the point of the matter is, NFL, you can do better. You started with marching bands. You worked your way up to Springsteen, Prince, Michael Jackson. And then you've slowly worked your way down. And you got to pull yourself out of there. Super Bowl, the halftime show needs to be a moment, and not a moment to go to the bathroom. It needs to be a moment to be riveted to the television set. You've done it before. You can do it again. And that's all I got to say about that. See you next time on I Want to Talk.